I warmly welcome you to this lesson, and straight away I take you to the correction of the previous lesson. We learned about articles, and I believe the work I gave you was simple enough for you to go through. You had the instruction saying of activity 5 saying, use article a, and the to complete the sentences. It was upon you to study the sentence and see which one fits to be the answer. Number 1 says, an orange is good after a meal. An orange is good after a meal. You realize that article an fits the first place of our answer. Why? The next word after serious examination, we realize that the word begins in a vowel sound o. And so those nouns that begin in a vowel sound takes article an. And those that begin in a consonant sound takes article a. That's the principle behind it. So we have it as an orange is good after a meal. That was number 1. Number 2 says, she eats an egg every day. An egg, you realize this sound is a vowel sound, and so it takes article an. She eats an egg every day. Number 3, Teddy met a European on her way to St. John's Church of Uganda, Chirinya. A European. One may ask, why are we saying a and yet we're saying a vowel letter? It is true we have a vowel letter, but the word itself starts in a consonant sound, European, and don't have that U sound in our vowel letter. So it takes article a. Teddy met a European on her way to Uganda. to St. John's Church of Uganda, Chirinya. That is it, friends. Number 4 says, Paul is the shorter of the 2 boys. Realize that article the is used when you're talking about comparative, when you're comparing two objects or comparing more than 2. And so this one we're comparing 2. Paul is the shorter. That's how it should be used. And that's the answer number 4. Let's look at number 5. Number 5 says, here is the article that I wrote in the Monitor newspaper. Here is the article. The article identifies this object. Here is the article I wrote in the Monitor newspaper. The needed word is the. Hope you got it right, dear friends. Next number says, it was such an interesting newspaper that I didn't want to stop reading it. Correct English. It was such an interesting. You realize an is taking its position depending on the word that it precedes. The word interesting starts in a vowel sound, and so it takes article an. That is what was examined. And the next number says, did you take a look at the front page of this newspaper? Remember, we needed a definite article the for this front page. It is already known to us. Did you take a look at the front page? Did you take a look at the front page of this newspaper? Here we have the sound, the word front, but we have to identify this page. This page was already identified to us, so we needed a definite article the. And that is the answer for that number. And we had the last number, number 8, saying, Omukebete is the funniest comedian in Uganda. That is the answer, friends, the funniest. Why? We are using this word the at a capacity of a superlative degree that we have seen in our sentence. It helps us confirm the answer. So those were the few numbers that you did, and I believe you understood. I encourage you to always make practice on whatever you have learned so that you recall and you use them so that you learn. See, when you learn, you don't forget. That is the good thing about learning. Friends, you're welcome to the next lesson. This is the use of which. I want to let us know, how do we use the word which? What is it, first of all? Which is an adjective, by the way. An adjective that tells us more about something. And this something, for this case, must be an object, a thing, but not a person. Can be an object, can be an animal, yes, but not a person. So we're saying which, as a relative pronoun, is used as an object or subject for things and animal. Yes, we use it as an object. For example, I can say, uh, I saw a cat. It passed in front of our door. You realize that it is referring to a cat. Yes? So, that relative pronoun we're saying, which is a relative pronoun used as a subject or object for things and animals. I can say, I saw a cat. It passed in front of Jaja's house last week. I'll say, it has been used to replace a cat. So if I'm to join the two phrases, I'll use which. Why? Which is the relative pronoun used for things and object or animals. That, I hope you have got that point. I still have another line for you to understand fully. We're saying when it is used, when we use it as a subject, yes, it replaces the subject of the relative pronoun. Like I told you, I saw a cat. It passed in front of Jaja's house last week. You realize that we have the first phrase, I saw a cat, that clause, I saw a cat. Then the next one says, it passed. That it is going to be replaced by a relative pronoun which, if I'm to join the two sentences together, that's what this line is meaning. That when we use it as a subject, it replaces the subject of the relative clause. So let's learn this from the examples. I have examples for you. I have this story. The story was not true. It was published in the newspaper. You realize that I'm talking about the story. The story is our object for now, the subject for now. The story was not true. It was published in the newspaper. This it is referring to the story, and this is a phrase. Why? What is a phrase? A phrase is a part of a complete sentence. Like here we have, the story was not true. It was published in the newspaper. This is already a complete sentence. But now, part of it is what I'm calling as a phrase or a clause. Yes, a clause. So, we have the first clause telling us introducing the story, which was not true. Then more information about the story comes in the next clause, which says, it was published in the newspaper. So I may be asked to join these sentences using the word which. Why? Which is the rightful word I can use to join sentences that do not talk about people, can talk about things like a book, tree, animals, yeah, and like that. So let's see what comes as the answer. The answer says, the story, we pick the object, I mean the subject, the story. You see this? This other information is about the story. Firstly, we shall say, the story which was published in the newspaper was not true. So you realize that we have picked the subject, the story, and pause there, go to the next phrase and connect which. Remember, which will replace the full stop and the article, I mean the pronoun it. Why? We said when we use which as a subject, it replaces the subject of the relative clause. This is our relative clause. It was published in the newspaper. So we shall say, the story which was published in the newspaper was not true. That is the answer for that number. I want to still let you learn more from the next example, and I hope you're good for it. It says, the puzzle was solved by Emmanuel. It was very complicated. This example gives us all the qualities of what I was talking about, the subject, the object, and so on. So we have the puzzle. The puzzle becomes our object. Was solved by Emmanuel. Emmanuel becomes our subject, the doer, in fact. Yes. So you realize we have the puzzle, which is the object, and the subject is the Emmanuel. Are you getting this? Then we have this other additional information about this very puzzle. And this other information is what I'm calling as the part of the sentence. That part of the sentence is what I'm calling as a clause. So you realize that we have the subject, the object, the puzzle. After identifying the object, go to the next relative sentence, relative clause, and join it with the relative pronoun given which. And remember that which will replace the relative pronoun, whatever relative pronoun we're going to get there, it will be replaced by the given conjunction. So we shall say the puzzle which was very complicated was solved by Emmanuel. Remember we said the puzzle which was very complicated was solved by Emmanuel. That is the answer. The story which was very complicated was solved by Emmanuel. That is the answer, dear friends. What someone is saying, but I'm seeing people's names. Yes, we're seeing Emmanuel as the doer, but we have the story. We're talking about the story being solved, which was very complicated. That is the answer, friends. Number 3 says, the article has been approved by the press secretary. It explained the president's visit. What are we talking about? We're talking about the article being approved by the press secretary. Then another additional information about this article is what is here. It explained the president's visit. So of the two areas, we have the first clause and the second clause. A clause is a part of a sentence. It doesn't tell us all information about it. Just tells us a part. Then another phrase also has another part. But when we combine the two, we make a complete sentence. So here, when we want to join this to make only one sentence, because we have two phrases here, we want to make a complete sentence without a full stop in the middle here, we shall need the conjunction which, the word which, because we're dealing with objects, things. So the answer will be the article. This is our subject, mainly our object. The article which you replace this full stop and the relative pronoun given here with the given conjunction which. We shall say the article which explained the president's visit has been approved by the press secretary. Simple as that, dear friends. That's what I'm saying. The article which explained the president's visit has been approved by the press secretary. Friends, I hope you've got it well. Realize that we have said the article which, in this capacity of which, there are two things we have displaced. A full stop at the end of the first clause, then the pronoun of the second clause. Which pronoun replaces or talks about the given subject article. So we shall say the article which explained the president's visit has been approved by the press secretary. Number next, dear friends, this information is very important. When which is used as the object, it appears to be the object of the sentence. Then we're using it as a subject, what we're talking about. But if which is used as the object, it appears to be the object of the sentence. Let's analog this one using the examples. What are we meaning? The subjects are different. The subjects are different. An example comes. The editorial was not interesting. The chief editor wrote it. The editorial was not interesting. The chief editor wrote it. We shall use the very given structure which to answer this by identifying what we're talking about. We're talking about the editorial. You see this? Editorial. We have the chief the chief editor. The editorial not being interesting. The chief editor wrote it. You realize that we have this it relating to the editorial. But the doer is here. The doer is different. The chief editor wrote it. We shall say the editorial which the chief editor wrote was not interesting. That will be the answer. We're saying the editorial which the chief editor wrote. You realize that we're saying the editorial which the chief editor wrote was not interesting. Let's get back and read. When which is used as the object, it is here. The editorial which the chief editor wrote, it appears to be the object of the sentence. What is our object here? What we are talking about, not the doer. what we are talking about. What someone has done is our object. Like for example, I can be a carrier, and I can say I'm carrying the phone. The phone becomes the object I'm carrying, and I am the doer. Which action am I doing? I'm carrying. So here we have the editorial. This is our object. This is our object, the editorial, which and was not interesting. The chief editor wrote it. The chief editor is our doer, and therefore the chief editor becomes the subject, but the object is the editorial. We're saying if it is used as an object, then it appears to be the object of the sentence. It comes here. Our sentence says the editorial was not interesting. The chief editor wrote it. So the answer will be the editorial which the chief editor wrote was not interesting. That is the answer, dear friends. More examples come. The newspaper was expensive. My father bought it. You realize that our answer will start from the object given, the newspaper which my father bought. You omit this it because it is already engulfed inside the conjunction given as which. Remember we said it is used in place of the relative pronoun of the relative clause. So we shall say the newspaper which my father bought was very expensive. That's the answer, friends. The newspaper which my father bought was very expensive. I think you've picked that as well, and therefore I want to give you this next number. The bouquet, the front page was colorful. I saw it. The bouquet, the front page was colorful. I saw it. We shall say the bouquet, the front page, which I saw. Remember, this it is a relative pronoun relating to a bouquet newspaper, and this time we're using which in that capacity, so there's no need repeating the word it in our sentence. So we shall say the bouquet, the front page, which I saw was colorful. That is the answer, dear friends. That is the answer. So with all that I've given to you, shared with you, I want to give you a simple task. You apply like we've explained to these other numbers and see how best you can go through it, through the numbers. By saying, join the sentences below using that relative pronoun which. It should be a small letter W. A smaller W, small letter W. Thought about that. So numbers come by saying, the newspaper was sold. It contained interesting cartoons. That was number one. Number two says, that house belongs to Kalanzi. It is painted white. Number three, the article was brief. It was published in yesterday's newspaper. As simple as that. The numbers are very few. We have this few number. Number four says, the brochures were fake. The man gave them to us. Number next says, the column was not printed well. It talks about religion, it talks about regional news. I read again. The column was not printed well. It talks about regional news. Then we have a wonderful time to write this and end our lesson there. This will mark the end of the activity and the end of the lower lesson. I wish you the best. Read your books, reverse to what you have learned and read them through. I hope all will be well, and I wait to see you in the next moment of learning. Bye.